In Plant List 4, we will be covering hollies and junipers. Ilex, or hollies, are broad-leaved evergreens or deciduous trees and shrubs. The foliage is usually leathery, and this is an evergreen species and genus. The flowers are small, cream to white, and dioecious, and the fruit is a berry-like drupe, and it is usually red or black. Ilex x Messervii, or blue holly, is in the family Aquifoliaceae. It has a light preference of full to partial sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. Ilex Messervii foliage is glossy blue-green with prominent spiny margins, as you see in the photo, and it also has purple stems. So the foliage is very dense, and this is an evergreen as well. The flowers are insignificant, but they are greenish to white, and they are very small. They bloom in early May. When the flowers are pollinated, they do produce a showy fruit, and this is usually dark red fruit, which typically persists through most, if not all, of the winter. And here we have that very showy red fruit, and then we also have the purple stems that we talked about. The habit of Ilex Messervii usually matures at 8 to 12 feet tall and is a dense shrub. The second Ilex species we have is Ilex crenata, and this is Japanese holly. Still in the family Aquifoliaceae, it has a light preference of full, partial, and full shade, and then a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage in Ilex crenata has ovate to elliptic leaves, and it also is crenate to cerulate. It's very glossy, especially on the upper surface. It is spineless, and it is also evergreen. These leaves are very deep green, and they usually are about 1¼ inch long. These leaves are attractive all year round, and the word crenata was from the crenate margins of the leaves. The flowers of Ilex crenata are petaled white flowers which have 3 to 7 flowered cymes in late spring, and that's May to June. Now the fruit are black, rounded drupes, which are about 1/4 in diameter, and these mature in fall on pollinated female plants. The habit in Ilex crenata is dense, multi-branched, and this is still that evergreen shrub with the rounded form, and it typically matures to about 5 to 10 feet tall and the same wide. Ilex glabra, or inkberry, is still in the family Aquifoliaceae with a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage in Ilex glabra is spineless, flat, and it is ovate to elliptic. It's very glossy still and has that dark green appearance. It's about 1½ inches long, and it has the smooth margins, the entire margins, with several marginal teeth near the apex, though. The flowers on Ilex glabra are greenish white flowers. The male are in cymes, and the female cymes are in cymes, or they may also be single. This appears in spring as well. Now the fruit for Ilex glabra is pea-sized, and it's jet black. It's still that berry-like drupe, And the size is 3/8 inch in diameter. And this also matures in early fall and persists through the winter. So if we have these fruits, these colorful, attractive fruits that persist over the winter, this is also going to have that 4-season appeal, right? Something to look at during in winter where everything else is, has dropped already. So now we have color, which is lacking in the wintertime. We have color here. The habit in Ilex glabra is slow growing. It is upright to rounded, and it is still that broadleaf evergreen shrub. It typically matures 5 to 8 feet tall, and it can also spread by root suckers, okay, to form more colonies, wide horizontally. Now, glabra is referring to the smoothness, okay, of the plant leaf surface. Ilex opaca, that's American holly, and it's still in the family Aquafoliaceae. It has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage has very spiny green leaves, and it's thick and leathery to touch. The leaves are about 2 to 4 inches long as well. And then it has that spiny marginal teeth around the edges that you can see in the photo. Now the flowers here are still greenish to white, and they bloom May to June. Now the fruit in Ilex opaca has a bright red or orange coloration, and these are drupes again, and these are 1/4 to 1/2 inch in diameter. They ripen in fall on pollinated female trees and persist throughout the winter. And this photo really illustrates the beauty of Ilex opaca. We have snow on the ground. We don't have a lot of color in the background, but we have the bright red coloration of the fruit. Okay, so this is Ilex opaca. The habit in Ilex opaca has an upright pyramidal evergreen shape that slowly matures to about 50 to 30 feet, but may reach up to 50 feet tall. And I thought this was really interesting. We have a photograph here of Ilex opaca. It's the second largest Ilex opaca in Ohio, and this is located right here in Stowe. Now we're going to move on to our second genus, and that's Juniperus or juniper. Junipers are coniferous evergreen trees and shrubs. The foliage is scale-like to awl-shaped, and the cones are female, spherical, and the male have small, they're very small at the branchlet tips. Now the fruits have female cones that mature to small berry-like structures with a waxy coating. So the first juniper that we have is Juniperus chinensis fitzeriana, or Pfitzer juniper. And we have it in the family Cupressaceae, and it has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. Now with Juniperus, this is a really good photo to point this out. We have the juvenile stage of the leaves, the first flesh that's going to come out, and that's going to be awl-shaped leaves, okay? And you can see that in the bottom, okay, where it says juvenile awl-shaped leaves. Now when these mature, say the next season, they're going to mature as scale-like leaves, very similar to, let's say, Arborvitae thuja, okay? So the foliage in Juniperus chinensis fitzeriana has dark green foliage, and this may turn to a darker green in wintertime, and this is attractive year-round. So we still have that juvenile and then adult, the different types of the foliage as well that comes into effect. And the cones are berry-like cones, and they're about a half inch in diameter. And they are pale blue when immature, and they mature to a more brown coloration. But those pale blue berries or cone-like berries are very attractive as well for Juniperus. Now, the habit for Juniperus chinensis fitzgerriana it's an evergreen shrub with, it's like a mountain-like to arching habit, as you can see here. And it typically grows about 4 to 6 feet high and 8 feet wide. Now, Juniperus conferta blue Pacific is blue Pacific shore juniper, and this is still in the family Cupressaceae, and it has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage in Juniperus conferta blue Pacific are very attractive, and they're aromatic as well. These are still that all shaped, and it has a blue to green foliage coloration. And it does display very spiny to pointed blue-green needles. These spiny pointed blue-green needles are about 5/8 inches long, and it's in groups of 3. Juniperus conferta blue Pacific has a fruit of a fleshy blackish berry-like seed cone that actually matures into a silvery bloom, and it's very attractive. And it also has a habit of an evergreen shrub, typically growing to about 12 inches tall. And where it gets its name, that conferta, the conferta is a Latin word for crowded, and that's in reference to the foliage being extremely crowded, as you can see in the photo. So this specific species, the blue Pacific, is noted for having better blue foliage color, and it has that better ground cover form, and it's also dense. It has a denser foliage along the branches, hence the name of that conferta. And it is also better resistant to winter injury. For Juniperus horizontalis blue rug, Wiltonii is blue rug creeping juniper, and that's in the family Cupressaceae, and has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus horizontalis Wiltonii has a scale-like in the adult stage, with some all-like needle-like juvenile needles, appearing usually in opposite pairs. The foliage is usually green to blue-green during the growing season, but during winter often goes towards a purple tone. The habit of Juniperus horizontalis Wiltonii, this has a dense prostate form, typically growing to about 4 to 6 feet tall and spreading 6 to 8 feet wide. And that is 4 to 6 inches tall, not 4 to 6 feet tall. It's 4 to 6 inches tall and then 4 to 6 feet wide. It also has a fleshy seed cone that's it's like a dark blue berry that usually matures in about 2 years. And then where that Juniperus horizontalis comes from, it references the horizontal branches. Juniperus horizontalis blue chip, or blue chip creeping juniper, is in the family Cupressaceae and has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of dry to moist, well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus horizontalis blue chip is primarily scale-like in the adult form with all needle-like foliage. And this is usually green to blue coloration. And then here we have the comparison of Wiltoni or Wiltoni and then blue chip at the bottom. So these two just comparing. So you can see the Wiltoni has a lot less foliage than blue chip. Blue chip is very dense. It has foliage on the bottom and the top. The Wiltoni does not. So that's a good comparison here because it's the same exact coloration. They have a lot of similarities. But the blue chip is going to be a lot more dense and full. And the blue chip is also going to have longer foliage and it's going to be more erect than the Wiltoni. And then we here have Juniperus horizontalis blue chip going into the winter. This is that purple hue that we get. Juniperus horizontalis blue chip also creates a fleshy seed cone that's a dark blue berry, and it matures to about 8 to 10 inches tall and spreads 10 feet wide. Juniperus horizontalis Youngstown is Youngstown Andorra juniper. This is in the family Cupressaceae and has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of dry to moist, well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus horizontalis Youngstown has a silver gray foliage that turns purple in winter. These branches grow upward and outward as well. The habit of Juniperus horizontalis Youngstown typically grows only 12 inches tall, but spreads over 6 feet wide or more. And this is mounding, and it's also densely, the branches are formed very densely. Juniperus procumbens nana is dwarf Japanese garden juniper. It's in the family Cupressaceae, has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus procumbens nana is spiny, pointed, and this has blue to green needles that are about 1/3 inch long. And the foliage also turns that purplish color in winter. The habit of Juniperus procumbens nana typically grows about 8 to 12 feet tall and then spreads 8 to 12 inches tall and then spreads 6 feet wide over time. And this is a dwarf, and this is a lot less vigorous form. Now we have Juniperus sabina Broadmoor, or Broadmoor Sabin juniper. This is in the family Cupressaceae and has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus sabina Broadmoor has soft blue-green foliage that is very attractive throughout the year. And then it also has this blue to green coloration that goes into the winter. The foliage is dark green with no purplish color in winter like a lot of the other junipers have that we had in this list. And then whenever it's crushed, the foliage releases an unpleasant aroma. So it's not so aromatic, it has an unpleasant aroma there. The cones usually appear on different plants. The male plants produce catkin-like pollen cones, and then the female plants produce like a fleshy berry-like bluish black seed cones that we've seen in the previous slides. The habit of Juniperus sabina Broadmoor, it's a low-spreading cultivar that typically grows 2 to 3 feet tall and spreads 6 to 10 feet wide as well. And this also has a brown bark on mature stems, and it peels and strips, so it's exfoliating as well. Juniperus scapulorum Wichita blue, or Rocky Mountain juniper, is in the family Cupressaceae, has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage in Juniperus scopulorum wichita blue has a light blue-green to dark green scale-like foliage, and this lies flat against the branches. It's very flat. And like I said, this could be blue-gray foliage, and then it also retains its foliage color all year round. So it's not going to change to that purplish hue that a lot of junipers get in the winter. It's going to remain as that blue-gray foliage. The habit of Juniperus scopulorum wichita blue is compact and conical, and it grows very slowly, about 6 to 12 inches per year, and it's going to mature to about 10 to 15 feet tall. But it may eventually reach to that 15 to 30 feet tall over time, but it is very slow growing. Juniperus scopulorum skyrocket, or skyrocket juniper, is in the family Cupressaceae. It has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus scopulorum skyrocket has more of an attractive powder blue foliage. And this definitely has the scale-like foliage as we've seen before, and it has a lot of ornamental properties because of this, because it remains that powder blue throughout the year. Again, it's not going to change color in winter. It's going to remain that powder blue coloration. Now, Juniperus scopulorum skyrocket also produces silvery blue berries from late spring to late winter. The habit of Juniperus scopulorum skyrocket, this is very narrowed, extremely narrow, rigid, tall evergreen shrub, and it grows to be about 15 feet at maturity with a spread of 24 inches. It tends to be a little bit leggy, and you typically need a clearance about 2 feet from the ground. And this is still suitable for planting under power lines, and this grows at a very slow rate as well. And at ideal conditions, this tree can be expected to live for about 70 years or more. Juniperus squamata, blue star or blue star juniper, is in the family Cupressaceae. It has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of dry to moist, well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus squamata blue star is very interesting, right? It almost looks like sedum if you're looking at it, different types of sedum, but it has a all-shaped, and it's silvery blue foliage, which is definitely attractive year-round, as you can see. Now, the habit of Juniperus squamata blue star has a very low growing and low mounded habit. And it typically grows only 1 foot tall after 5 years, but eventually matures to be about 2 to 3 feet high. But this is a very nice ground cover. And then the berries that are formed here are bluish berry-like female cones, and it has a single seed. So this species is also commonly called single seed juniper because of that bluish berry-like female cone that only contains that one single seed. And then we see here, Juniperus squamata blue star. If we see that foliage up close, it looks like a blue star, hence the name. Juniperus virginiana, or eastern red cedar, is in the family Cupressaceae, light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus virginiana contains scale-like foliage, and this scale-like foliage may become brown to green in the winter, but it has that green coloration throughout the growing season, and then it turns more brown going into winter, and this is normal for Juniperus virginiana. And then we see here on the branches, it has like a gray to reddish brown bark that exfoliates in thin shredding strips on mature trees. The habit of Juniperus virginiana is typically columnar. It's dense evergreen conifer with horizontal branching that typically grows to 30 to 65 feet tall. And the female trees produce round gray to blackish green berry-like cones that are 1/4 inch in diameter. And these berry-like cones may be very attractive to birds. Juniperus virginiana gray owl, or eastern red cedar, gray owl, is in the family Cupressaceae. It has a light preference of full sun and a soil preference of moist to well-drained soils. The foliage of Juniperus virginiana gray owl, they have a bluish green scale-like foliage, and this foliage may turn a brown green in winter as well, and this is scale-like silvery gray. The habit of Juniperus virginiana gray owl includes a more broad habit, and it's slow growing. It's very compact and widespreading, and it typically grows about 3 feet tall to 6 feet wide. It also has a gray to reddish brown bark that exfoliates in the thin, shreddy strips on mature trees.